Yeah, and that's no surprise. As we said, originally the estimates were 6 to 8 weeks, and they've done everything possible to try to get him on the short end of that time frame, and I've always thought it would be more like the latter end. The fact that he's actually listed as doubtful is some indication that he's getting a little bit closer, but no, not a surprise at all. And I think it's best for Dallas to wait until he's completely healthy, because the worst thing you want is to aggravate the injury or make it worse. So I think you have to look long term, and that's tough with an organization that considered themselves a contender, but they have to do that.
Yeah, John, and obviously that's a very big game inside the NFC. We'll dive into it in just a bit. We've got also Odell Beckham listed as questionable. You saw him live the other night. He had that touchdown early in the game, but did you think Beckham was bothered by the hamstring in the second half?
Yeah, I did. It was clearly, I mean, he looked fine pregame when he was running routes and doing some things, but it was clear he didn't feel like he could really, let it go and really just go all out. So I think he turned into pretty much a possession receiver. And he's still important to have on the football field, because anytime he's out there, he's going to get the opposition defensive coordinator very, very concerned. And I think that's the Giants' mentality when, if he's, 50-50, if he's questionable, if he's hampered by the hamstring, at least if he's out there, he can have an effect and help other guys get open. And I think that's why he's there, because clearly he's not 100%. It's not the same guy we normally see when he's out there.
A lot of stuff on this Eagles game we want to dive into. They're playing this Carolina team that's very good defensively right now at 97.3 ESPN.com. John has 5 on the Panthers. Let's look at them on the defensive side of the ball. What part of their defense will give Philadelphia problems? Is it the run game, or are they a team that's going to defend the pass very well?
They do both very well, but first and foremost, it's those two linebackers now that Luke Kuechly's back and coming up with Thomas Davis. So it's going to be very difficult to run the football consistently with those two guys out there. I don't know if everyone – I just retweeted that video going around that's you can see Thomas Davis dislocating his finger mid-play, and he puts it back into place and still makes the tackle as the play is going on. So that's the kind of toughness he brings to the table. And I've said for about 2 or 3 years, Luke Kuechly's the best all-around linebacker in football. And he's, further off the concussion now, so he's going to be 100%. That part of it's just going to be a very difficult matchup, especially for a team like Philadelphia that likes to pull its offensive linemen and get them out in space. It's just not a good matchup against this particular defense.
Yeah, and obviously Kuechly, as you mentioned, and Thomas Davis, those two guys are very good linebackers, but they also have a guy in the secondary that not a lot of people have a lot of knowledge about, and obviously leads the league in interceptions down there. So this is a spot where they got a playmaker in the secondary, but is that an area where if Sam Bradford's playing well that they might be able to find an over-aggressive kind of player?
It's possible, but anytime, Norman's been the best cornerback in football, and I know everyone wants to automatically go to Darrelle Revis or Richard Sherman, but that's not the case. He's been the best cornerback in football, and when you look at what the Eagles have at the wide receiver position, and the fact that Nelson Aguilar's already ruled out, Riley Cooper's questionable, so he might not go. So it's possible you're going to see a lot of Miles Austin and Josh Huff on the outside, and even Azura Tutu. So I don't see any of those guys doing much against a player like that, and that's just one of the issues the Eagles have on a typical week, because we've talked about it for weeks and weeks now. These receivers are just not very good.
Yeah, let's look at the receivers, because at Cooper, and now you're saying he could not play. He's listed as questionable. We already know Aguilar's out. I know Cooper is hasn't been a steady player for them, but last week he showed some signs. They have got him more involved. We heard what Chip said, 60-40, 51-49. But if he doesn't play, what does that do to Sam Bradford and our judgment of him?
Well, it hurts the Eagles, and I know people kind of chuckle at that because of what they think about Riley Cooper. But all of a sudden, you just have to realize how Chip Kelly rolls through receivers and that offense rolls through. You need a certain number of guys in the rotation. Otherwise, even if you're hitting on all cylinders, you're going to have, a Josh Huff out there for 70 snaps and a Miles Austin at his age out there for that many repetitions. It's not a good scenario. So it's very important that he's able to go, and I still think it's more likely than not that he'll try to play just because Riley is a very tough player, and if it is 50-50, as questionable indicates, he's certainly going to give it a go, I would imagine. But it's very key this week simply because you need the bodies for what the Eagles want to do on offense.
No doubt. As we mentioned, 5 on the Panthers from John over at 97.3 ESPN.com. 5 on Cam's Cats, I should say. Dominating defense is number 1. But their offense, not a lot of big names over there unless you're forgetting about Greg Olsen. And Al Wallace was on earlier from Charlotte with us, and he said right now he might be the second best tight end in all of football.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, obviously Gronkowski stands alone, but once you get past there, I think Greg Olsen has been a better player than Jimmy Graham dating back all the way to last season. I don't think people realize how good Olsen was last year, and he's picked it back up again this season. And he's very important for that team because they don't have Kelvin Benjamin. He's gone for the year with an ACL. Ted Ginn has been their best receiver. Devin Funchess is a rookie. Jericho Cotchery's there. But it's not a lot of guys on the outside who can scare you, similar to here in Philadelphia. The difference is Greg Olsen is what the Eagles fans want Zach Ertz to be. He's a dominant tight end, and you saw it against Seattle in their last game with the game-winning touchdown, but he does that consistently week in and week out.
John, the running game, this is a team that really likes to run the ball. Even though they don't do it great, they stick with it. They'll keep doing it. You've mentioned many times the fact that Newton averages almost 50 yards a game on the ground. But is this an area where Philadelphia is licking their chops, saying, if you're going to run the ball with us, you're running right into our strength?
Yeah, it is. It's going to be an interesting matchup because the Panthers do like to run it. And even if it isn't going as well as you would like, they're going to continue to do it because they know that's the strength of their team. And if it wears you down by the fourth quarter, then they can make plays, especially with the quarterback, because he's just so big. I don't think people realize just how big he is. A 265-pound player. They list him at 245, but he hasn't seen 245 in about 3 or 4 years. And he's bigger than every linebacker in this league. And the one difference between him and guys like Kaepernick, who's not playing well, you mentioned that earlier, but he certainly can run the football, and Russell Wilson and all the other mobile quarterbacks, is he can take on a defender and run them over like a real running back, and that's an issue because it's really difficult to defend. Your normal run defense is designed to be 11 on 10. With the Panthers, it's 11 on 11 because the quarterback's just as good as a running back.
Yeah, and we saw last year, and Chip was asked about this yesterday, they spied him with Connor Barwin, who I think sacked him 3 times, if not more, last year. They got him 9 times. Do they use that same type of defense on this version of Cam Newton?
I don't think so. I think it worked last year, and Chip kind of talked about this earlier in the week. They knew Cam was hurt, and he wasn't running the football at that time. He had just come off ankle surgery. He also had a couple other nagging injuries, so he wasn't running the football at that particular time, whereas now he's going in healthy. And I've never liked spying on really mobile quarterbacks because it doesn't matter who you use. And in this case, Connor Barwin, as athletic as he is and can be, and he certainly is, he's not as athletic as Cam Newton. So what's the point? If Cam's at 100%, he's going to be able to outrun Connor Barwin. That's just the facts of the matter. So I think the Eagles were very smart last year to do it because they realized he was a wounded player at the time, and they're smart enough to realize he's not now. So they're going to scale back on that at least a little bit.
John McMullen, we're looking at 5 on the Panthers with John. Peters and Johnson, the 2 tackles for the Eagles. This is a team that does a very good job protecting or defending the run, I should say. They've got good linebackers there as well. They rush the passer, so very tough matchup. But it seems that Peters, and Kelly alluded to this, I think, on Wednesday or Thursday, and Johnson are starting to raise the level of their play.
Yeah, they really are. And Peters has been lights out for the last 2 weeks, and Lane's been playing very well despite a sprained knee. And this isn't the same Panthers defense when it comes to the pass rush. You know, Greg Hardy's down in Dallas. Charles Johnson's injured. So they don't have those dominant edge guys any longer. They brought in Jared Allen, but he's been banged up. And that's the one aspect where they're not as foreboding as they once were. So I think for another week, Sam Bradford's going to have the luxury to understand. Certainly he's not going to get that much of a pass rush outside. And we'll see if he can get in a comfort zone and stop seeing those ghosts we talk about and step up and throw the football.
All right, we'll get John's pick on this game in just a minute. And, of course, Sam Bradford is a big story leading into the game. And obviously, when you look at Sam Bradford, there's a lot to do with Chip Kelly, the GM, and Chip Kelly, the coach here. But he's got a lot of guys in that same situation. Is that the same deal with the Murray Matthews thing, that Chip Kelly, the GM, made the decision that Murray was the guy? Is that a similar situation going on there?
It's a similar situation money-wise. Obviously, since DeMarco makes more money, he's supposed to be the number one guy, and it looks bad if he's not. So I understand why people make that correlation. But he's also had some success at times. Remember, he was over 100 yards, and even though Matthews has looked better, we've talked about some of those other issues in the past. He's already banged up with the groin injury. He's had some ball security issues in the past. And so has Murray, but not to the same degree. So there are other aspects to why DeMarco Murray's the number one running back and is going to continue to be. And that's just one of the many pieces. But you can also point to the fact, as I said, the difference between him and Bradford is he's at least had some success, and you've now seen him rush for 100 yards, and that's understand, okay, this is what DeMarco Murray can do. We haven't seen a consistent game. We've seen maybe a good quarter here or there for Sam Bradford, but that's it.
John, and by the way, DeMarco Murray had 112 yards last week, and he can go for back-to-back 100-yard rushing games for the first time as a Philadelphia Eagle. And, this is a team that really needs to establish a run. I thought interesting, Sal Powell on earlier, he brought up an interesting number. First quarter, 16.4 seconds was the average time per play for Philadelphia. In the fourth quarter, John, 35.3 average time per play. A real indication that Kelly, something clicked or somebody smacked him upside the head and told him, you got to slow down the offense there, pal. And it's helping out not only the offense, but the defense as well.
No, time of possession doesn't matter. You know that, Mike. And it's not. It really hasn't. It really hasn't changed. For all the criticism Chip gets on that, he deserves it. I'm not trying to defend him. You have to look at the situation. The Eagles played very well in the last 2 weeks, and that's why you see that giant shift. They had big leads in the fourth quarter, so you're trying to at least milk that clock somewhat. And Chip's done that in the past. It's not like he hasn't. So I think a lot of that depends on the situations in the actual football game. And if the Eagles have another 2-touchdown fourth-quarter lead in Carolina, you'll see a similar situation. But if they're down 2 touchdowns, obviously that number's going to turn on its head because you got to move quickly. You got to try to get back in the game. So I think people look at those numbers and they have to kind of pick them out and put some context into them. But certainly this team does better when they have more time of possession. So whether Chip believes that or not, it's a fact. The numbers bear that out. I think they're 9-2 when they have the time of possession edge. So I think he should take a step back and look at that a little a little more clearly and see that it does help the team at times.
All right, something I saw you tweet out earlier today, Jordan Matthews, second in drop percentage, 10% of the balls thrown to him have hit the ground. Is that just an unacceptable number?
Yeah, it's beyond unacceptable for an NFL receiver. It's not 10% of the targets. It's 10% of the catchable targets. So it's deemed that, a sort of like, and there's always some gray area in that type of thing because it's not a hard statistic where you can look at it and say a normal receiver would have caught it. But we've all seen enough great NFL receivers to realize that they don't drop the balls that Jordan Matthews does. And if anything, it's gotten worse this year. He had that rap at Vanderbilt as a high-volume guy. He caught a ton of passes and he dropped a lot. And some people thought he just got a little lazy with his habits because the hands were there. But it's translated over to the NFL, and it's got to stop, and it's got to stop soon.
All right, a couple other games. You got another game in London this week, Buffalo and Jacksonville, and I saw you tweet out earlier today as well that the NFL is going to extend that for another 5 years, and I guess that game seems to be working out. They get some stinkers over there. It's been real bad games, but it seems like it's working out. Do the players – I know Philadelphia hasn't been in one, and I guess in the next 5 years you would assume they're probably going to get stuck playing one of them, but is there any rhyme or reason on which game they pick? Are they trying not to put higher profile teams over there? I mean, how do they decide? Because it seems like these games are all bad games.
Yeah, well, they have not had a game in London with two winning teams, so that tells you all you need to know. And some of that's bad luck because the early season games you have to have a team that goes into the tank pretty quickly. But it's usually Jacksonville, for instance, is over there every year because they have issues selling tickets at home. So a lot of it has to do with teams willing to give up that home game because most teams don't want to. And obviously the NFL is really, really intent on building up their fan base outside this country and trying to take the sport global. And London's been very, very successful for them. But, yeah, the players as a whole, they want no part of it. They hate going over there. The logistics are just a nightmare. They've made it a little bit better because when you go over there, the teams get the bye week the next week after. But by and large, they just dislike it.
Yeah, and I did see LaShawn McCoy over there. Said he was out in London with his family. So, it seems like he is enjoying the British over there.
Well, it is. There is a lot of history, and Shady didn't strike me as the history type, but you never know. People surprise you,
yeah, especially since he went to Pitt. Those people are very unsophisticated.
And that speaks to West Virginia guy. But Western Pennsylvania, coal region, pro football. Yeah, you don't think about European history normally.
No.
But Shady surprised people in the past. And remember, he's from Harrisburg. So
yeah. Well, good for him and the family getting a chance to experience the finer things in life over there. Mariota out, Aguilar out, Joe Hayden out. There's some of the big names out. Des Bryant most likely out. So there's a lot of interesting things. Big Ben questionable. A lot of people don't think he will play. So some big injuries still in the NFL this week. All right, John McMullen, 97.3 ESPN.com. His official pick has been posted. We'll get it now. Eagles and Panthers. Where are you going?
Well, I think you have to go Panthers, but I think it's going to be closer than most people expect. It's an unbeaten team playing at home, so you would normally chalk that up as a win. And I think you have to for the Panthers until Sam Bradford proves he can play a clean football game and not turn it over. And considering the Panthers turn over the football and defense better than just about anybody else, it's hard to imagine that's going to start this week.
All right, John, 20-17. He's got posted Panthers over Eagles at 97.3 ESPN.com. All right, we'll recap it all on Monday at 4:05 when John returns for more on the Eagles this weekend and always 24/7 right there at 97.3 ESPN.com. Thanks, John.
Hey, thanks, Mike. Enjoy the game.